They told us humans were just another primitive species, soft-bodied creatures who'd barely crawled out of their gravity wells, wielding crude projectile weapons and burning chemical fuel to power their rickety ships. The intelligence reports painted them as emotional, irrational beings who would crumble at the first sign of organized resistance. We were the Zephyrian Empire, conquerors of 43 star systems, masters of plasma technology, genetically perfected warriors bred for conquest. Our exoskeletons could withstand direct hits from fusion cannons. Our reflexes operated at speeds that made light seem sluggish. We had never known defeat. But as I float here in this medical pod, my 3 remaining limbs trembling uncontrollably, my compound eyes struggling to focus through the trauma, I need you to understand something. Everything we thought we knew about humans was catastrophically, terrifyingly wrong. This is my testimony. This is why the Zephyrian High Command has issued Order 77, the complete withdrawal from all human-occupied systems. This is why we now classify humanity not as a target for conquest, but as a species to avoid at all costs. Because battling humans wasn't just warfare. It was pure, unfiltered terror unlike anything the galaxy has ever witnessed. My name is Krixdal Vorthak, and I was a Void Hunter of the 43rd Legion, First Class. In Zephyrian military hierarchy, that designation carried weight across the entire spiral arm. I had personally overseen the subjugation of 7 worlds, each conquest more efficient than the last. My combat record was flawless. 847 confirmed eliminations, 0 retreats, 0 failed objectives. The geometric scarification across my carapace told the story of my victories, each mark representing a fallen enemy commander. When High Command selected my unit for the initial reconnaissance of the Sol system, I felt nothing but confidence. The humans had been flagged as a potential expansion target for 3 rotations ever since our long-range scouts detected their crude electromagnetic emissions leaking into space. The intelligence briefings were almost laughably dismissive. Humans possessed no faster-than-light travel, their longest-range weapons relied on controlled chemical explosions, and their military doctrine appeared to center around large groups of individuals carrying simple projectile launchers. Most amusing of all, they appeared to conduct warfare during daylight hours and observed something called rules of engagement. Our xenobiologists theorized this was due to their prey species' evolutionary background. Unlike proper predators such as ourselves, humans had developed from pack-hunting omnivores who required cooperation and therefore needed behavioral restrictions to prevent self-destruction. The transport ship Eternal Dominion carried our full battle group, 1,200 of the Empire's finest warriors, equipped with Class 5.0 plasma rifles, gravitic shields, and personal armor systems that had proven effective against every species we'd encountered. Our mothership possessed enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, and our fighter craft could operate in atmospheric conditions that would kill most organic life forms. Commander Zekthal briefed us in the primary staging bay as we approached Earth's outer system. His mandibles clicked with anticipation as he gestured toward the holographic display showing the human homeworld. Sensors indicate approximately 8 billion individuals concentrated on the primary planet, he announced, his voice carrying the metallic resonance that marked him as a combat veteran. Their technology appears frozen at what our analysts classify as early industrial spaceflight. No energy shields, no plasma weaponry, no gravitational manipulation. They've launched primitive satellites and established a small outpost on their singular moon, but nothing that represents a genuine threat to our operations. The assembled warriors chitted their amusement. 8 billion individuals sounded impressive until you realized they were distributed across an entire planetary surface with no unified command structure. Our own homeworld housed 12 billion Zephyrians in perfectly organized hive cities, each citizen genetically optimized for their specific role in society. Initial contact protocols will follow standard procedure, Zekthal continued. We establish orbital superiority, eliminate their military installations, and broadcast surrender demands. Historical analysis suggests human pack hierarchy will collapse once we neutralize their leadership structures. Total subjugation estimated at 47 standard cycles. I raised one of my secondary arms to indicate a question. Commander, what resistance capabilities do the humans possess? Intelligence reports mention something called nuclear weapons. Zekthal's mandibles spread in what passed for a Zephyrian smile. Primitive fusion devices, Void Hunter, powerful enough to damage themselves, but their delivery systems are laughably slow. Our point defense networks will neutralize any such weapons long before they reach effective range. These creatures developed atomic fire before achieving proper spaceflight, another indicator of their fundamentally irrational nature. As we entered the outer edges of the human system, our sensors began collecting detailed information about their military capabilities. What we discovered initially reinforced every assumption in our briefings. The humans maintained several hundred nuclear missiles in underground silos, but these weapons required extensive preparation time and followed ballistic trajectories that our computers could predict with perfect accuracy. Their space-based assets consisted of a handful of observation satellites and a small research station that appeared to house perhaps a dozen individuals. More encouraging still, their military forces seemed scattered across their entire planetary surface, with no centralized command authority. Different geographical regions maintained separate military structures, often using incompatible equipment and communication systems. Several of these regions appeared to be actively hostile towards each other, despite facing the arrival of an alien fleet. "It's almost disappointing," commented Subcommander Yeriktal as we reviewed the tactical displays. "I was hoping for at least token resistance. This will be less a conquest than a simple cleanup operation." The first phase of our assault began flawlessly. Our gravity pulse weapons disabled every human satellite within the first few minutes, rendering their communications and observation networks completely inert. Simultaneously, targeted plasma strikes eliminated their missile installations before they could achieve launch status. The coordination was perfect, the execution flawless. Exactly what we expected from 43 successful planetary conquests. Human responses during this initial phase seemed to confirm their prey species' nature. Instead of immediately attempting counterattacks or negotiating surrender, their government spent precious time attempting to communicate with each other and with us. They broadcast radio messages in several different languages, apparently unaware that we had already decoded their linguistic systems months earlier. The content of these messages was exactly what our Xenop psychologists had predicted: expressions of confusion, requests for dialogue, and attempts to establish diplomatic contact. Several human leaders made public broadcasts to their populations urging calm and cooperation. It was textbook prey species behavior. Faced with a superior predator, they instinctively sought to avoid conflict through submission and appeasement. "Begin the demonstration phase," Zekthul ordered after reviewing the human communications. "Select a minor military installation, eliminate it completely, then broadcast our terms. That should collapse their resistance psychology immediately." We chose a human military base located on an isolated landmass in one of their southern oceans. Intelligence indicated it housed approximately 2,000 military personnel and served primarily as a training facility. The base possessed no strategic weapons and represented no genuine threat to our operations, making it perfect for demonstrating our overwhelming technological superiority. The plasma bombardment lasted exactly 37 seconds. When the energy dissipated, nothing remained of the installation except a glass crater approximately 1 kilometer in diameter. 2,000 human lives extinguished without the possibility of resistance or escape. It was clean, efficient, and utterly decisive. Then we broadcast our surrender demands across all human communication frequencies. The message was simple and direct: immediate cessation of all military activities, dissolution of their government structures, and preparation for integration into the Zephyrian Empire. We allowed them 6 of their rotational periods to respond. The human reaction was unlike anything in our xenological databases. Instead of the expected collapse of resistance psychology, something extraordinary happened across their entire species. Rather than fragmenting into competing groups seeking individual survival, the humans began coordinating their response with unprecedented efficiency. Military forces that had never cooperated began sharing intelligence and resources. Civilian populations started evacuating from areas we had designated as strategic targets, but not in the panicked flight patterns typical of prey species. They moved with purpose and organization that our analysts found deeply disturbing. More unsettling still, the humans began broadcasting a stream of communications that our xenopsychologists classified as defiance displays. Instead of pleading for mercy or attempting negotiation, human leaders made public statements that bordered on threatening behavior toward a clearly superior military force. "They're telling their population to resist," reported intelligence specialist Morthak, his secondary eyes flickering with confusion. "Not just resist, but to fight using any means necessary. They're distributing technical information about improvised weapons and defensive tactics. It's almost like they want to maximize casualties rather than minimize them." Commander Zekdal studied the reports with growing perplexity. In 43 previous conquests, we had never encountered a species that responded to overwhelming force with increased aggression rather than submission. The xenological models suggested such behavior was evolutionarily impossible. Species that failed to submit to superior predators went extinct during their development phase. "Perhaps it's a bluff," suggested Subcommander Yeriktal. "They may be attempting to convince us they're more dangerous than they actually are." Intimidation displays are common among prey species when cornered. But as we continued monitoring human communications, it became clear this was no bluff. Across their entire planet, humans were transforming their industrial capacity toward military production with speed that defied comprehension. Factories that had been producing civilian goods were retooled overnight to manufacture weapons and equipment. Research institutions began sharing previously classified technology openly. Most disturbing of all, human military forces started adopting tactics and strategies that seemed specifically designed to counter our advantages. How could they possibly know our capabilities? Wondered intelligence specialist Morthak as he reviewed intercepted human communications. They're discussing countermeasures against plasma weapons and gravitational shields, but we've never encountered these technologies in battle within their sensor range. The answer came when our deep space monitors detected something impossible: human spacecraft approaching from the outer system. Not the primitive chemical propulsion craft we had observed earlier, but vessels moving at velocities that indicated advanced propulsion technology. Vessels that had been concealed beyond our scanning range during our initial reconnaissance. "Commander," reported sensor operator Klaiktar, his voice betraying unusual tension. "I'm detecting 17 distinct signatures approaching our position. Configuration unknown, propulsion system unknown, but their approach vectors suggest coordinated battle formation." Zekthal immediately ordered full defensive protocols. Our combat fleet arranged itself in standard predator formation, with our heaviest units forming the spear point and smaller craft providing coverage against potential flanking movements. It was a configuration that had proven effective against 43 different species across 43 different worlds. The human vessels close to engagement range and open communications. The message was brief and delivered in perfect Zephyrian military dialect. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have committed an act of war against humanity by destroying our installation and killing our personnel. Withdraw from the system immediately, or face the consequences." The precision of their language was startling enough, but what followed was genuinely incomprehensible. The human admiral continued speaking in what our linguists confirmed was flawless high command protocol. "We know who you are, Zekthul of the 43rd Legion. We know your combat history, your tactical preferences, and your technological capabilities. We know that your species has never encountered organized resistance from what you classify as prey species. Today, that changes. Impossible." The information security around our operations was absolute. No species outside the Zephyrian Empire should have possessed knowledge of our military structure, let alone specific intelligence about individual commanders. Yet this human leader was speaking as though she had access to our own strategic databases. "How?" Zekthal transmitted back, abandoning protocol in his confusion. Admiral Chen's response chilled us all. "Because we've been watching you, Commander, for longer than you realize. Did you really think a species could develop spaceflight capabilities without noticing the activities of interstellar predators? We've been tracking your empire's expansion for decades, studying your methods, analyzing your weaknesses. The question isn't how we know about you. The question is how much you don't know about us." And then the human vessels opened fire. The human weapons defied every principle of physics we understood. Where we expected primitive kinetic projectiles, they fired concentrated beams of energy that bypassed our gravitational shields as though they didn't exist. Where we anticipated chemical explosives, they deployed some form of matter disruption technology that turned our advanced armor plating into molecular dust. Most impossibly of all, their targeting systems tracked our ships through our stealth fields with perfect accuracy, despite the fact that our cloaking technology had been undetectable by 43 different species across as many worlds. The first volley eliminated 3 of our escort vessels before our defensive systems even recognized they were under attack. The second volley crippled our primary weapons platform and left us completely exposed to follow-up strikes. In less than 2 minutes of engagement, the human force had reduced our supposedly invincible battle group to scattered debris and desperate evasive maneuvers. "All units, implement emergency withdrawal," Zekthul commanded, his voice cracking with something no Zephyrian commander had ever experienced in living memory: fear. "Fall back to minimum safe distance and prepare for emergency translation to hyperspace." But as our remaining ships attempted to retreat, we discovered the humans had deployed some form of spatial disruption field around the entire engagement area. Our faster-than-light drives simply refused to activate, leaving us trapped in normal space with no escape route available. "Translation drive offline," reported engineering specialist Korthek, his mandibles clicking in panic. "Something is interfering with our quantum matrices. The field harmonics are completely scrambled." Admiral Chen's voice echoed across all our communication frequencies, calm and professional despite having just devastated our fleet. "Don't bother trying to run, Commander. We've been studying your FTL technology for quite some time." Disrupting hyperspace transitions was actually one of the easier problems we solved. Through our sensor arrays, We watched the human vessels maneuver around our crippled forces with precision that spoke of extensive training and preparation. Their formations were nothing like the chaotic pack-hunting behavior our xenobiologists had predicted. Instead, they moved with the calculated efficiency of apex predators who had identified every weakness in their prey. "This is impossible," Sub-Commander Yurital whispered, staring at the tactical displays showing human ships effortlessly outmaneuvering our own. "Their technology is centuries ahead of what our intelligence reported. How could we have been so completely wrong about their capabilities?" The answer came when Admiral Chen opened a direct communication channel to our command bridge. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing something that challenged every assumption we had made about human physiology and development. The figure before us bore only superficial resemblance to the primitive specimens in our biological databases. Admiral Chen was clearly human in basic structure, but her eyes held an intelligence that seemed to pierce directly through our defensive psychological conditioning. More disturbing still, various technological enhancements were visible beneath her skin, suggesting some form of cybernetic integration that our analysts had never detected in their observations of human populations. "Commander Zekthul," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that indicated she was speaking through some form of technological translator tuned specifically to Zephyrian psychological frequencies. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what you've encountered here." Zekthul straightened his primary arms in a gesture of military formality, though I could see his secondary limbs trembling with stress responses. "You claim to represent humanity, but your technology indicates a level of development that contradicts all our intelligence gathering. What are you?" Admiral Chen smiled, and that expression contained more threat than any weapon we had ever faced. "We're exactly what we appear to be, Commander. We're humans." "The question you should be asking is what humans actually are, rather than what you assumed we were based on your limited observations." She gestured, and the holographic display expanded to show images from across human civilization. "But these were not the primitive settlements and crude industrial installations our scouts had reported. Instead, we saw massive underground complexes extending deep into the Earth's crust, orbital facilities that had somehow escaped our detection entirely, and technology that made our own weapons seem crude by comparison." "You've been watching us for months," Admiral Chen continued, "but you were only seeing what we wanted you to see. Every electromagnetic emission, every industrial signature, every military installation you observed was carefully crafted to present exactly the image we needed you to form. We wanted you to think we were weak, primitive, and vulnerable. The implications were staggering. Everything our intelligence services had gathered about humanity had been deliberately fabricated. The crude technology, the fragmented political structures, the apparent inability to detect our presence, all of it had been an elaborate deception designed to lure us into exactly this situation." "Why?" Zekthul demanded, his voice carrying the confusion and rage of a predator that had discovered it was actually the prey. "Why construct such an elaborate deception? Why not simply contact us directly, or demonstrate your actual capabilities?" Admiral Chen's expression grew cold. "Because we needed to understand what we were dealing with. Your empire has been expanding across this sector for decades, conquering and enslaving every species you encounter. We've been monitoring your communications, studying your technology, and preparing for the inevitable moment when you decided Earth represented a suitable target." She paused, allowing the full impact of her words to settle. "We know about the 43 worlds you've conquered, Commander. We know about the billions of sentient beings you've killed or enslaved. We know about your plans to expand into this sector and establish humanity as another subject species in your empire." The holographic display shifted again, showing detailed intelligence reports that could only have come from inside Zephyrian High Command itself. Strategic plans, troop movements, technological specifications, and command personnel files were all displayed with perfect accuracy. "How long?" Zekthul asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We made contact with survivors from the Corinian system approximately 18 years ago," Admiral Chen replied. "A refugee ship managed to escape your conquest and reach our outer monitoring stations. The stories they told us about your empire's methods convinced us that eventual conflict was unavoidable." The Corinians. We had conquered their homeworld during my second campaign, a textbook operation that eliminated their resistance within days. I remembered the efficiency of that conquest, the way their military forces had collapsed once we demonstrated our technological superiority, but apparently some had escaped to warn humanity about what was coming. "Since then, we've been preparing," the Admiral continued. "We've studied every aspect of your technology, your tactics, and your psychology. We've developed countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize your advantages, and we've been waiting for you to make the first move so we could respond with complete justification. Sub-Commander Yuriktal activated his communications panel with visible desperation. This is Sub-Commander Yuriktal of the 43rd Legion to High Command. We require immediate reinforcement and extraction. The humans possess advanced military technology and have successfully engaged our forces. Request full battle fleet deployment to Sol System immediately. Admiral Chen shook her head, almost sadly. I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Sub-Commander. We've been jamming your long-range communication since you entered this system. High Command has no idea what's happening here, and they won't until we decide to let them know. The tactical situation was becoming clear with horrifying inevitability. We were trapped in a system controlled by an enemy that possessed superior technology, complete intelligence about our capabilities, and months or years of preparation time. Worse, they had deliberately manipulated us into a position where we had committed the first act of aggression, giving them moral justification for whatever they planned to do next. What do you want? Zektul asked, finally abandoning any pretense of military dominance. What we want, Commander, is for you to carry a message back to your High Command, Admiral Chen replied. You're going to tell them exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that humanity is not the primitive prey species they believed us to be. And you're going to make it very clear that any further aggression toward Earth or its allies will result in consequences your empire is not prepared to face. She gestured again, and the display showed images that made my carapace crawl with involuntary fear responses. Massive human warships emerging from concealment throughout the Sol system, orbital weapons platforms that had somehow been invisible to our senses, and most terrifying of all, clear evidence that human technology was capable of tracking and intercepting ships in hyperspace itself. We know the location of every world in your empire, Commander, Admiral Chen continued with calm certainty. We know your population centers, your military installations, and your industrial infrastructure. We've been preparing contingency plans for systematic strikes against your entire civilization, and we're fully prepared to implement them if necessary. The display shifted to show detailed tactical analyses of Zephyrian worlds, including our own heavily defended homeworld. The level of intelligence was impossible to comprehend. They possessed information that should have been accessible only to High Command itself. However, Admiral Chen said, her tone becoming slightly less threatening, we're not interested in becoming conquerors ourselves. We don't want to rule over other species or expand our territory through violence. What we want is for the killing to stop. She leaned forward, and her enhanced eyes seemed to look directly into my soul. Here's what's going to happen, Commander. We're going to repair your ships just enough to reach your nearest base. You're going to return to High Command and deliver our message personally. And then your empire is going to withdraw from this entire sector and cease all expansion activities. Zakthul's mandibles spread in confusion. You're allowing us to leave? After we attacked your world, we're allowing you to leave because your deaths here wouldn't serve our purposes, Admiral Chen replied. Dead messengers can't deliver warnings. We need you alive so you can convince your leaders that humanity represents a threat they cannot overcome through conventional military action. The holographic display showed our own ships with human vessels beginning to approach them. But instead of weapons fire, the humans deployed repair drones and engineering equipment, beginning the process of restoring our vessels to minimum operational status. I don't understand, Sub-Commander Yuriktal said, voicing the confusion we all felt. You possess overwhelming technology superiority. You could eliminate our entire force and prevent us from reporting back to High Command. Why preserve enemies who will certainly return with reinforcements? Admiral Chen's smile returned, and it was even more unsettling than before. Because, Sub-Commander, we want you to return with reinforcements. We want your High Command to send their largest fleet, their most advanced technology, and their finest warriors. We want them to commit everything they have to conquering humanity. The implications of her words slowly penetrated our shock and confusion. The humans weren't just preparing to defend against Zephyrian aggression, they were actively attempting to provoke it. They wanted our empire to launch a full-scale invasion of their system. And when they do, Admiral Chen continued, when your empire commits its full military might to conquering what they believe is a single primitive world, we're going to destroy them so completely that the Zephyrian Empire ceases to exist as a threat to anyone, anywhere in the galaxy. The repair operations continued around us as we tried to comprehend what we had stumbled into. This wasn't a first contact scenario gone wrong, or a miscalculation about primitive prey species. This was a carefully orchestrated trap that had been years in the making, designed specifically to lure the Zephyrian Empire into a position where humanity could eliminate us entirely. The journey back to Zephyrian space passed in a haze of traumatic disbelief. Our ships had been repaired just enough to reach the nearest Imperial outpost, but the humans had installed monitoring devices that tracked our every movement. We were prisoners being escorted home to deliver our captor's message, and everyone aboard understood the humiliation of our position. Worse than the shame, however, was the growing realization of how completely we had misunderstood the situation. Every conversation with Admiral Chen, every piece of intelligence they had shared, pointed to the same terrifying conclusion. Humanity had been manipulating the entire first contact scenario from the beginning. They hadn't just prepared defenses against Zephyrian aggression. They had actively engineered circumstances to ensure that aggression would occur exactly when and where they wanted it. They knew we would attack, Sub-Commander Yuriktal observed as we reviewed the tactical recordings for the 100th time. Every aspect of their deception was designed to make Earth appear vulnerable and valuable as a conquest target. The scattered governments, the primitive technology displays, even the population concentrations, all of it calculated to appeal to our strategic preferences. Intelligence specialist Morthak had spent days analyzing the human technology we had witnessed, and his conclusions were deeply disturbing. Their weapons systems aren't just advanced, he reported during one of our daily briefings. They're specifically designed to counter Zephyrian advantages. The energy frequencies that bypass our shields, the targeting systems that penetrate our stealth technology, the spatial disruption fields that prevent hyperspace translation. None of these represent general technological advancement. They're targeted solutions to specific Zephyrian military capabilities. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't simply developed superior technology through natural scientific progress. They had reverse-engineered Zephyrian systems and designed countermeasures with the specific goal of neutralizing our military supremacy. The level of preparation and forethought involved suggested planning that extended across multiple decades. When we finally reached Imperial Outpost Gamma 7, the station commander initially refused to believe our reports. Sub-Admiral Korthovex had overseen Imperial expansion in this sector for 8 cycles, and the idea that a primitive prey species could defeat the 43rd Legion contradicted everything in his experience. "You're claiming that humans possess faster-than-light interdiction technology?" he demanded, his compound eyes flickering with skepticism. Species that haven't even established permanent off-world colonies somehow develop spatial manipulation capabilities that exceed our own? Commander Zakthal transmitted the complete tactical recordings without comment. The holographic displays showed human vessels effortlessly destroying Zephyrian ships, their weapons penetrating our most advanced defensive systems as though they were completely ineffective. More damning still, the recordings included Admiral Chen's detailed knowledge of Imperial military structure and strategic planning. Sub-Admiral Korthvex watched the entire engagement in stunned silence, his mandibles clicking unconsciously as he processed information that challenged fundamental assumptions about galactic civilization. When the recordings ended, he remained motionless for several minutes before speaking. "This intelligence must reach High Command immediately," he finally declared. "If these recordings are authentic, we're facing a threat unlike anything in Imperial history." The message burst that carried our reports to the home world included everything: tactical recordings, intelligence summaries, analysis of human technological capabilities, and most importantly, Admiral Chen's explicit challenge to Imperial expansion. Within one standard cycle, we received orders to report directly to the Strategic Command Center on Prime Zephyr for immediate debriefing. The return to our home world felt like entering a different universe. The perfectly ordered hive cities, the genetic optimization laboratories, the massive industrial complexes that supplied our expanding empire, everything that had once represented the pinnacle of galactic civilization suddenly seemed fragile and vulnerable. We had seen what humans were capable of, and the knowledge transformed our perception of Zephyrian power from unshakable confidence to desperate hope. High Command's response exceeded even our worst expectations. Instead of caution or strategic reassessment, the Supreme Military Council interpreted our reports as evidence that humanity represented the greatest prize in Imperial history. A prey species that had developed advanced technology while maintaining the psychological vulnerabilities of their evolutionary heritage would provide unprecedented opportunities for technological acquisition and strategic advantage. "They're bluffing," declared Supreme Commander Thexula during our formal debriefing. "No species developed such advanced technology while maintaining prey species psychology. Their demonstration was impressive, but it represents the maximum extent of their capabilities deployed against a small reconnaissance force. A full Imperial battle fleet would overwhelm their defenses through sheer numerical superiority." I tried to explain what we had actually witnessed: the calculating intelligence in Admiral Chen's eyes, the methodical precision of human tactical coordination, but the High Command had already reached their conclusions. They saw what they wanted to see: a technologically advanced but fundamentally weak species that could be conquered through traditional imperial methods. The 43rd Legion failed because they underestimated their opponents, Supreme Commander Thexula continued, dismissing our warnings with casual arrogance. The solution is overwhelming force applied with perfect coordination. We will deploy the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Imperial fleets simultaneously, along with specialized assault forces equipped with our most advanced weaponry. The battle plan that emerged from High Command represented the largest military operation in Imperial history. Over 4,000 vessels carrying 2 million of our finest warriors, equipped with planet-cracking weapons and supported by artificial intelligence systems that could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. It was designed to eliminate human resistance through absolute, overwhelming superiority. But I had looked into Admiral Chen's eyes. I had heard the calm certainty in her voice when she explained that humanity wanted exactly this response from our empire. They weren't just prepared for a massive Zephyrian assault. They were counting on it. 3 standard cycles after our return, the Grand Armada departed for the Sol system with appropriate ceremony and imperial confidence. Supreme Commander Thexula personally commanded the expedition, confident that he would return with the greatest conquest in Zephyrian history. The entire empire watched their departure with anticipation, believing they were witnessing the expansion of imperial power into a new phase of galactic dominance. I remained on Prime Zephyr, officially recovering from combat trauma, but actually desperate to avoid participating in what I knew would be a catastrophic disaster. The monitoring devices the humans had installed in our ships continued transmitting intelligence back to Earth, providing them with detailed information about Imperial military capabilities, strategic planning, and fleet composition. They knew everything about the approaching Armada, while we remained completely ignorant of their actual defensive preparations. The first indication that something had gone wrong came when the Grand Armada failed to report their arrival in the Sol system. Imperial protocol required regular communication updates during major military operations, but after the scheduled arrival time passed without any transmissions, High Command began attempting to establish contact through emergency channels. The silence continued for days, then weeks. Long-range sensors detected no evidence of battle, no debris fields that would indicate engagement, no hyperspace signatures that would suggest fleet movements. The Grand Armada had simply vanished as though it had never existed. Then Admiral Chen's message reached Prime Zephyr. The transmission bypassed all Imperial security protocols and broadcast directly to every communication device on our homeworld simultaneously. Every screen, every audio pickup, every data terminal suddenly displayed the same image. Admiral Chen standing on what appeared to be the command bridge of a massive warship, with Supreme Commander Thexula and his senior staff visible in restraint fields behind her. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," she began, speaking in perfect high imperial dialect, "your government has dispatched a military force to conquer humanity and enslave our species. That force has been completely neutralized and its personnel taken into custody. They are alive and unharmed, but they will not be returning home." The implications of her words sparked panic across our homeworld. The Grand Armada represented more than half of our total military capability, including our most advanced technology and experienced commanders. If the humans had truly captured the entire fleet, the Imperial military was effectively crippled. However, Admiral Chen continued, "The fate of your military personnel is not our primary concern. What matters now is ensuring that the Zephyrian Empire never again threatens any innocent species anywhere in this galaxy." The display shifted to show images that defied comprehension. Human fleets emerging from hyperspace around Imperial worlds throughout our territory, their vessels appearing in perfect formation around our most heavily defended systems. Somehow, while we had been focusing our attention on the Sol system, humanity had deployed forces to every major Zephyrian installation simultaneously. "As of this moment, every world in your empire is under human military oversight," Admiral Chen announced with calm professionalism. "Your orbital defense platforms have been disabled. Your military installations have been occupied, and your government facilities are under our direct control. This transition has been accomplished without casualties, but any attempt at resistance will result in immediate and decisive response." The strategic situation was impossible to comprehend. Humanity had somehow deployed military forces across dozens of star systems simultaneously, coordinating attacks that would require communication and logistical capabilities that exceeded anything in our experience. More impossibly still, they had accomplished this while maintaining their deception about being a primitive planet-bound species. The Zephyrian Empire as a political entity ceases to exist as of this transmission, Admiral Chen continued. Your species will remain on your homeworld under human supervision until we determine appropriate measures for preventing future aggression. The 43 worlds you conquered will be liberated, and their populations will receive whatever assistance they require to rebuild their civilizations. She paused, and her expression softened slightly. This is not intended as permanent subjugation. Humanity has no interest in ruling over other species or expanding our territory through conquest. What we are establishing is a period of transition, during which Zephyrian society can adapt to new realities and develop peaceful methods of interacting with other civilizations. The final portion of her message was directed specifically at the imperial population. Your leaders told you that conquest was natural, that superior species had the right to dominate inferior ones, that violence was the foundation of galactic civilization. These beliefs brought your empire into conflict with humanity, and that conflict has ended with your complete defeat. Now you have the opportunity to discover different ways of existing in the universe. The transmission ended, leaving our entire civilization in stunned silence. In the cycles that followed, we learned the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. Their technology was not just superior to ours, it represented a completely different approach to scientific development. Where Zephyrian research focused on military applications and conquest, human science had developed solutions to problems we had never even considered attempting to solve. They possessed matter-energy conversion systems that made their resource base effectively unlimited. Their artificial intelligence networks could process information and coordinate activities across galactic distances in real time. Most remarkably, they had developed what they called probability manipulation technology that allowed them to predict and influence large-scale events with extraordinary accuracy. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the revelation that humanity was not alone. The refugee ship from the Corinian system had not just brought warnings about Zephyrian expansion, it had initiated contact between Earth and a hidden network of species that had survived imperial conquest through concealment and mutual cooperation. Humanity's defeat of our empire was not an isolated achievement, but part of a coordinated resistance movement that had been preparing for centuries. As I record this testimony, floating in my medical pod with my injuries slowly healing, I can see through the viewport of our orbital habitat the ships of the human oversight fleet maintaining their quiet vigil around Prime Zephyr. They are not conquerors in the Zephyrian sense. They do not demand tribute or forced labor or impose their cultural values upon us. Instead, they serve as guardians, ensuring that we never again possess the capability to threaten other species. The terror I experienced during our encounter with Admiral Chen has evolved into something more complex: respect, admiration, and perhaps even gratitude. Humanity showed us that there were alternatives to conquest, that strength could be used for protection rather than domination, that intelligent species could cooperate rather than compete for survival. The Zephyrian Empire is gone forever, but Zephyrian civilization continues under human guidance. Our young are being educated in sciences and philosophies that our previous society had never imagined. Our researchers are learning to develop technology for peaceful purposes. Our culture is slowly adapting to the radical concept that other species possess inherent value beyond their utility as subjects or resources. And sometimes, late at night when the human patrol ships pass by our viewports with their quiet, watchful presence, I find myself feeling something that no Zephyrian had ever experienced in our thousand-cycle history of conquest and expansion. I feel safe. Because I know that as long as humanity stands guard over this galaxy, no species will ever again face the terror of Zephyrian military might, and no world will ever again fall silent under the shadow of our empire's expansion. The humans were right about one thing. Battling them was pure terror. But not for the reasons we expected. The terror came from realizing that everything we thought we knew about strength, about power, about civilization itself, was completely and catastrophically wrong. Battling humans was pure terror. An alien soldier tells his tale, HFY sci-fi story.